Yeah, I think certain career paths are interesting. If you think of someone like a doctor, it's obviously you can tell when a good doctor is a good doctor, but there's no hard data to kind of define it. It's not like I saw X amount of patients today, therefore I was better than I was before. But there's some careers where you can physically see that. Like if you work in construction or you're a carpenter or whatever, you can see the value of your craft getting better.
Yes.
It becomes more muscle memory. And interesting things like tech, data science, finances, there's just like the numbers just start coming quicker and you start going through faster. I think progression is addiction,
Yeah.
becoming better. People think that passion comes first and then dedication, but I tend to think it's the other way around. Like you get stuck in something and that's when you become passionate for it.
Yeah, and I think I resonate that a lot and I look at my boss, for example. His inspiration to me, to be honest. He qualified as a CA and a registered auditor by the time I think he was 25 or 26, which is incredible. I mean, and now I speak to him and I kind of pick his brain on tax and on investment and all these things, and it just comes to it's like, oh, but think about this and think about this, and like that's so cool. Imagine I'm sitting at a table and someone blurts something out about I don't know, tax, for example, and I can turn around and say, okay, but that's all good and well you say that, but this is actually the mechanics. And a lot of that bores people, but I think for me it's like, it's I wouldn't call it an addiction, but a passion. It's something that I just thoroughly enjoy.
Yeah, I think hearing an expert speak about anything is incredible. I think the I always think of the one quote from Good Will Hunting. I don't know if you've watched
I've
the movie.
watched, yeah.
It's Will Burns that proof he did for the professor, and the professor trying to put it down. He says there's only a handful of people in the world that can tell the difference between you and me,
Yeah,
but that gap is insurmountable.
yeah, yeah,
How like if you know enough to know the gap between the good and the great,
yeah,
or the great and the best,
yeah.
seeing them just be passionate about something is incredible. But maybe to your boss, who you said who's been a good mentor for, or who's been a good mentor for you, mentorship is something that I've thought a lot about this year,
Yeah.
just because uh, I listened to this one lady talk about a problem with women right now, well, women and men, is that you don't have the aunties at the table anymore
Yeah.
at these family dinners.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I thought about that. That's true, but you also don't have the uncles anymore. Like I didn't have really any male figures in my life as a kid, except for my dad. And this might be a surprise, but my dad wasn't the best
Yeah.
male role model. So I kind of think of, how do we get better role models out for young men? How do you actively be a better role model for people?
Yeah, I think, look, I like to be the person who a lot of people can come and speak to. I always encourage people to speak to me about sensitive things and things that are troubling them. And it's not easy for a lot of people to, and the men, I think, in today's world, like it's not easy for, and I sometimes myself am super vulnerable, and I show that to my brother. I show that to a very select few people, but I do that, and I think for me it's a good outlet. And I think a good thing is when you're having a conversation with someone is to turn around and admit, kind of in instances where you've said something wrong, you've done something wrong, and you learn, and then I think by you learning yourself, you're kind of teaching other people to do the same thing. And it's cool, sometimes outsmarting someone in a sense is like, oh, like I can feel good about myself today, and that might just be by me saying, actually, you know what, you're right, and you've actually got this one. And I think that's a way to be a role model, and that's something that I try and aspire to do. Yeah, to just admit, kind of when I've someone trumped me or done better, and I hope that in that sense, someone can be like, oh, but let's actually take a step back
Mm.
and admit that to ourselves. And that in itself shows vulnerability, right? You don't want to be in a group of people turning around and going, oh, actually, you know what? You got me,
Yeah.
and
Humility. I think
yeah,
is the word looking for.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I find it very interesting what you said about the vulnerability thing.
Yeah.
I heard this amazing perspective on it. I can't remember who it's from, but it's this man. He's a world-renowned psychologist, one of the best in the world. And he's talking about his 9-year-old daughter was crying the one day, and he's trying to figure out why his 9-year-old daughter was crying. and he's speaking to her, and he asks her, "Listen, are you sad or are you upset? Are you angry right now?" And she goes, "No, I'm angry, I think." And he goes, "Then why are you crying?"
Yeah.
And she says, "Well, when I cry, my sister comes and comforts me, and when I'm angry, everyone goes away." And
Sure.
it made me think about the whole, with men, I think there's a bit of a reverse effect where people only really care about men's emotions when it's angry.
Yeah.
When it's angry, people listen to me and we want to solve a problem. But when sadness, you feel like they're looking down at you or feeling pity for you, and that's not what you want.
Yeah.
And I want to try and find a way to normalize for men to be able to be like, I'm not angry, I'm just hurt.
Yeah.
Because even for myself, I find myself some days when I'm really just sad and someone asks me what's up, I'll say, no, I'm frustrated with this.
Yeah.
Because I can't be sad about it, I have to be frustrated.
Yeah.
And I want to try and figure out how do you change that space for men so they can just see like, no, this hurt my feelings. Like, this actually made me sad today.
Yeah.
You know?
I do that often. I have my people that I go to. I think that's one thing I could say is find your one or two people, to do that with. And it might be unexpected. Maybe it might not be your best mate, but it might be someone that you go to coffee run on a Friday with, that you just every time you run 5Ks with, you speak to that guy. And and then if you're having a crap day, you kind of, maybe that's your person to kind of speak to that. Pick your people, pick your people and express your vulnerability. And I think if you've done it once, it becomes comfortable to do it again. And that's what I've found. And I've found that, there's one or two mates, and Brenton Greaves is a mate of mine. He's someone that I do that with. My brother is someone that I do that with as well. And it's not a lot of I don't tend to do that to my parents, because then it's the same kind of thing you said. Then they start to comfort you, and it's like, well, I just want you to listen. So that's what I would say is find your one or two people, 2, 3 people, and like let them know that you want to be, that's your person. And if you're going through something bad, like that's your person.
I find it so interesting. I love that part where you say they try to comfort you, but you just want to be heard.
Yeah.
And I think the one thing that we also need to do is we need to be better at holding space for people.
Yeah.
And I always reference that clip from Theo Vaughn and Sean Strickland. Have you seen the?
I follow Sean Strickland. I just haven't seen the clip.
Oh, Sean Strickland was on Theo Vaughn's podcast, and you know who Theo Vaughn is, right?
Yes, yeah.
The goofiest guy in the world. But Sean was talking about his dad's abuse and how bad it was, and how like he used to hide under his mom's bed to make sure the dad didn't kill her in his sleep. And he was getting really choked up about it, and just before he like kind of breaks down, starts crying, he like chokes on like I kind of stopped believing in God at that point.
Yeah. Sure.
And Theo's like seeing him crying, and he just says, "Hey man, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We can just sit here if you want. We don't have to talk. But I'm sorry."
I think there's something that might be from my school days, but you listen to people and you hear people, right? So listening is a choice, hearing is almost like a consequence of a conversation, right? So I always try and listen to. I'm not the best at doing it. I'm really not, and I don't think a lot of people are. And you always want to have something to say to what they're saying, and sometimes in doing that, you're not listening to what they're saying, you're hearing what they're saying. And while you're hearing that, you're just thinking of the next thing to say. And I do it sometimes where I'm like always saying something to what.
I think men do it so often, dude. We're always in fix it mode. Like the stove is broken, go fix it. Your friend is broken, go fix it.
Absolutely, and I think it's great. I had it. There was a moment last year with Amish. He was actually on your pod, but he was speaking to me about something, and I always just said something back to him. And I actually clocked it myself, where I was like, you know what? I need to stop talking. This guy doesn't want me to say anything. He just wants me to listen. And at that point, I just stopped, and I was like, dude, like, you know what you got to do. You know you're gonna figure it out. Just listen to yourself. Listen to yourself, to what you're saying, and like, I'm here. Like, lean it all on me. Do you know what I mean? Like, say what you want to say and get it out. And I never followed up with him on that specific topic, but it was like a thing of, it's just in that moment realizing that that guy, like, he doesn't want me to say anything, he just wants me to listen.
Hey guys, hope you enjoyed that clip from the interview of Agu. If you want to come onto the podcast, remember, all are welcome. Just fill in the form in the description and we'll see if we can have you on. If you want to watch the full podcast, click on the link here. If you want to watch anything else from the channel, click on the link here. Thanks for watching, guys.